Hi guys, Melanie here at Vision City Design Studio. Thank you for watching this video. In this video, I want to talk about a topic that everybody is asking me about in my webinars and in my courses, and that is the topic of copyright for artists. If you're an artist, an illustrator, a designer, a letterer, if you're somebody who makes creative art, you're a maker, you're somebody who's constantly creating ideas and your number one fear is how to really handle the whole world of copyright, this video is for you, so keep watching. Now, before we go any further in the video, I want to make it crystal clear that I'm not in any way a lawyer or legally allowed to give legal advice of any kind, so that's definitely not the kind of video this is, but this is more tips and tricks along for those of you who are artists and creatives just like me. I am a visual artist. I run my own design business. I've been running it for over a decade now, and I've had a really great success story selling my art online and building licensing deals, wholesale deals, and so on. And so that's really why I make videos like this, and this is why I create webinars and courses, because I really believe that with what I've learned, I can help a lot of you artists out there. And so again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm here for you to give you some great information that I have gained along the way. Now, first and foremost, what is copyright? Copyright is the legal right. It is an intellectual property law, so it is actually once you actually register your art for copyright, you legally have the authorization to sell your art, to make copies of it, to have it published in, say, books or in a variety of different formats. You actually also have the legal right to create derivatives of the art, to sell it not only retail but also wholesale, to create licensing opportunities for yourself, to have your art products be sold into, say, major larger scale retail chains and so on. So as an artist, technically that is the things that you have available once you are registered for copyright. Now, there's a lot of real different opinions on this, and I personally have different opinions as well, but I wanted to talk to you about a few of those things and kind of like the pros and the cons of actually registering your art for copyright versus not doing so. And I think that there's a real argument for both, depending on who you are as an artist, because going through the process to copyright your art is an actual process legally and financially, which is worth discussing. But yes, I do obviously see that there is a benefit of both sides. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. To register your artwork in America, what you would do is you go to the Library of Congress and you would actually file a copyright for each of your art pieces. There is a process to actually register collections as long as those collections are created within 1 year of each other. And obviously, as long as they appear as they are a collection and you can present them as a collection, then they can be registered as a group. The filing fee for registering a copyright in the United States is $35 per copyright. So say, for example, if you're going to register one at a time, and based on what I've researched, it appears as though that could actually cover a collection as well. So yes, there is a process to do so and a cost. However, it may be worth it in order to prevent issues later on, and I'll discuss more of that with you in a moment. Now, the first thing to think about is that as you're creating your art, to think about the time frames that you're actually working on things in order to be able to group as many into a short amount of time as possible so that you're able to then register more than just one at a time. Obviously, as you can imagine, if you're registering like one at a time at $35 US, that's going to add up really fast, and I think that could be a really high expense for artists. I personally have on my Etsy shop right now, I probably have 120 pieces, and they're all unique, they're all different, and I can't even imagine that the cost that would incur for me, and it wouldn't really make sense for me. As yes, I sell really well, but that would be like a really, really high expense for me as a business owner, and so it wouldn't really make sense for me to do so. So the other thing too to think about is depending on where you live, like say for example, if you live in Canada, the registration fee appears to be closer to $50, and that's as of the research that I've done just recently. So that could fluctuate depending on where it is you live. If you're living overseas or in a different country, then you're going to look up your own copyright office locally and to discover what is the cost for one item or for a group collection. Those are the questions that you're going to want to ask over the phone or over email to discover what is the cost so that you can really discover whether this is a benefit to you or if it's actually more of an incurred cost. Now, technically, when you create a piece of art, by law, right from the moment you pick up your pencil or your pen or your watercolor brush or whatever your instrument of choice is, off of the paper, or maybe it's a digitally created piece on the computer, right when you are completed that piece, technically by law, it is yours. So technically, all art that we create is copyrighted. Now, here's the only thing though. The way that you would have to do so to prove that that is yours in law or in the court of law, if for whatever reason you were in a weird position where somebody had taken your art and they made money using it, then if you wanted to then sue that person and basically be compensated as an artist, you would have to then prove in a court of law that you are the original creator. Okay, so having a legal copyright in your hand of your art piece is obviously the number one way to do so. There are other ways, and it really depends on how the legal situation goes and how like the actual judge or whoever is involved in making that decision. You could show other things like your original sketches and so on, but a lot of those things may or may not hold up in the court of law because they could have basically been created at any time. So some people say that you could even do this thing called like a poor man's copyright, when you actually mail yourself your art piece. So you put the art piece in the mail and then you have it, stamped and dated and then mailed back to you. But technically that apparently does not hold up in the court of law. So I wouldn't really suggest you doing that. So say you're an artist just like me and you're really weighing out the pros and cons of actually registering your art for copyright or not. Here are some of the pros that I feel like could really be a benefit to you and if we were to go ahead and copyright our artwork. The first real pro is that, for example, if you are infringed upon in any way, for example, somebody takes one of your art pieces and makes t-shirts with them. Now say they make, $5,000 on those t-shirts. That is the profits of what they've made using your art on their shirts. You could technically take that person to court and you could technically sue them. Now, if you did not have a copyright registered, you would be eligible for that $5,000. So in a way, it kind of makes sense. It sounds fair, right? However, if you did have a copyright on that registered piece that they had used, then what would happen is you would not only be entitled to the actual earnings of what was made during that infringement, but you'd also be eligible to the punitive damages, as well as other forms of damages. And by the way, I'm not a legal person, so I'm trying to do my best to try and explain this without sounding like I'm trying to be a lawyer. But those, for example, punitive damages are like stress, time off of work to be able to even go to court. And you'll also be eligible for legal fees as well. So whatever legal fees you'd incur, because hiring a lawyer to go to court is extremely expensive. And so that's actually one of the reasons why artists just usually don't do it, because if an artist doesn't have the income to then go and hire some expensive lawyer to represent them in the court of law, a lot of times they just give up and they don't even make a big stink about it. They often just kind of surrender the art, which is sad, right? Because us artists, we work really hard on our art. And so if you were registered for copyright, then what's going to happen is you would have the legal right to also get back your legal expenses. So if you didn't have a registration, you would have only the profits of what was made. However, if you did register, you'd have the profits, the punitive damages, as well as the legal fees. So that could potentially be, $100,000, okay? So obviously that's like a dramatic example, but I'm just trying to give you an example of the differences between being registered and not registered. The other thing too about registering for copyright is that you would have, a lot of people say you'd have a bit more peace of mind. I do believe that can be true. I do believe that there's, this is a pro, but I do also believe there are cons to going through this process. Another pro of registering for copyright is if you personally are having a major breakthrough in the art world, maybe you as an artist are becoming recognized. Your name is becoming recognized, your style is something very uniquely yours, and it's not widely spread. So you as an artist are becoming recognized for your style. And the best example I could give for this would be Obey, the artist that we all know, Obey. Shepard Fairey, he's a brilliant artist, and his brand, Obey, has obviously blown up over the last, decade. And I remember when I really first started seeing his art everywhere was during the Barack Obama's, his actual election campaign. That really cool Barack Obama illustrated poster that was everywhere, and it was something that was really widely spread. And when an artist is being used in an election campaign for the person who ends up winning, obviously that artist is now being sought after, and their personal art explodes with popularity, obviously. And so because of that, and obviously Obey is somebody who was recognized highly in the art world previous to that, and had major large-scale showings and murals, and just a ton of very political and message-driven art. In a lot of ways was or is still a very recognized artist. And so when that happened, Obey really became a voice of a recognized style. And so everybody, is going to want to copy that style. And so somebody like Obey is the type of example of what I'm talking about. He's somebody who was having a lot of, a major publicity and recognition in his art. And so he's somebody who should definitely, obviously, be copywriting every single thing he creates, because the value assigned to each one of his pieces is so high that the small registration fee in his case would not be a big deal. And even to hire lawyers for him obviously may not be considered a large deal compared to somebody who's just doing sketches at home and who nobody knows who they are, right? Now, like I said, the cost to register in the United States for your artwork, which is called, you would be called the author of, even if you're not doing literary art. This is a visual art video, and that's what this is geared towards. But the cost would be $35 per copyright registration. And there is an option to do a collection if you would need to do so. I really believe that there are cons, though, to registering for copyright as well, especially for those who are just in the process of starting out. A lot of my students, for example, who take my courses, my webinars, they are really in the process of literally discovering their style. And so I feel like when people want to register things and copyright everything and go through expensive initial registrations, I feel like a lot of times what I'm saying to them is, why don't you just see what kind of a reaction you're getting? For example, if I go ahead and I go through the process and spend a ton of money to register a bunch of my artwork, yet I have no plan to sell anything and no marketing plan, no publishing plan, no way to actually get my art out there, then I've just spent a ton of money and I have all this artwork sitting in my basement. You know what I mean? So I kind of feel like you need to have both sides going in order to have this process benefit you as an artist. And so that's what I would suggest. I really believe in artists finding their voice and really discovering their style first, as well as kind of testing out the market a little bit and seeing if people are into what you're creating. If there's not really a market for what you're creating and you want to make this a business, then I think that that could be a bit of a challenge to go ahead and register everything up front when there's no market. So I think that that's something to really consider. I'm actually of the mind that really anything that you and I put online technically can be taken. I know it sounds sad, but it's true. I have had it happen in the past, and it was really frustrating. It wasn't on a very large scale, but it was definitely something that kind of frustrated me and upset me. However, I was aware that by putting my art out online, that anything that we put out, even photos of ourselves, photos of our kids, anything we put on the internet, even words that we put on Twitter, or words that we put on Instagram, or phrases we put out, or art, photographs, art, no matter what it is that you and I put online, especially on social media, can technically be taken, copied, and so on. Now, that is the nature of the world we live in, and honestly, even when people copyright sometimes, I feel like people can still take their pieces, and then we're the ones who have to constantly be trying to track people down and find out who's taken what. It's still a bit difficult to discover who's taken your stuff. And I know it sounds like a very scary thing, but that is the nature of the world we live in as being online now. We live online, our art's online, our communities are online. Facebook groups and so on. So I feel like it's one of those things that is a complete gray area. Now, if you're an artist, you really need to weigh out the benefits versus the pros and the cons. When it comes to registering your artwork, I find it's a really hard question for me to answer for people because I don't know what your plans are. I don't know what level of exposure you're getting. I don't know what kind of reaction you're getting or what kind of a name that you're developing for yourself as an artist. If you're somebody who's getting a lot of traction, you're getting a lot of sales, you are getting requests to do shows, maybe your art is being requested in top-notch galleries and so on. Obviously, yes, you're going to want to register every single one of your pieces. But if you're just sketching in your sketchbook for the very first time, do you need to register every sketch in your sketchbook? Maybe not so much. So as long as you are in the process to really develop it into a business, and if your art is not just in the hobby form, but it's something that you want to generate a main income with, or even a side income, then copyright can definitely be something to think about. So I hope this video has really helped you. I talk a lot about this and a lot more on my online webinars and in my courses. There is a link under this video to join my current webinar. It does not last forever, so click the link before it expires. And I really hope that it'll serve you, and I hope this video has helped you and served you in the area of copyright. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.